Well, greetings, friends of music, wherever you may be tuning in from. This is Jim Horowitz, President and CEO of JAS, Jazz Aspen Snowmass. We are celebrating 30 years, which is probably about as old as, I know you don't have to tell me, but I'm going to guess that our two fabulous young artists today probably came into the world at a not too distant time from when Jazz Aspen did, which is 30 years ago. And I'd like to introduce two of our favorite artists that have been here in recent years and are making noise in the world of jazz music and music in general. Emmet Cohen on the piano. Hi, Emmet. And Veronica Swift on vocals. And hello, Veronica. And let's first of all start with Veronica. Those earrings you're wearing are absolutely stunning. And look, I mean, you look like an Egyptian princess.
Oh, I don't. These are actually bell bottoms. This is a bell bottom jumpsuit, so I'm more of just like 1970s disco queen, I guess.
Yeah, okay, but still you look nice. And where are you exactly right now? Is that your home?
This is my home here in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Beautiful. All right.
We got our own mountains here.
You do? Excellent. And Emmet is amazingly enough and unusually, he's the first artist to do one of these Zoom interviews with us who decided to come to Aspen to do the interview as opposed to doing it from home. He's playing hooky from New York Jazz and he's here at Aspen, and we're going to try to show him a good Aspen spring time here in the mountains. It's good to have.
I came to do the interview in person, and you still made me come on Zoom. So here we are.
It's great to have you both. I would like to start first of all by saying that I feel like I discovered both of you a few years ago at a very similar time, and I don't, because of doing what I do, I don't always remember who the first person was or when I first became aware of an artist that I might not have known. But I feel like it might have had something to do with the Miami connection. So tell me, is that where you two encountered each other, or where did you first, because you have your own trajectories and independently and together. So I'm curious, first of all, how you two first encountered each other musically.
Well, musically and personally, I mean, these are two different situations, you know? When I met Emmet, I was about like 17, I think. He was 21 because he's 4 years older. And I met him, I was touring schools, colleges, and he was just about to graduate from Miami. And I think our mutual friend, Alex Weitz, who films a lot of Emmet's live stream shows, was my friend, and he introduced me to Emmet at remember Books and Books?
Yes. In Washington, D.C., right? No,
well, there's
Miami Beach. Books and Books in Miami Beach.
Yeah,
the guy who started Books and Books I went to, he's my compatriot. His name is Mitchell Kaplan. And we went to Miami Beach Senior High School together. So
you went to high school with Mitch Kaplan? That's crazy.
Yeah. You know him?
I went to preschool with his daughter,
there you go.
Anya, and I went to Encore Coda summer camp with your nephew.
With Will, yes.
Yeah, that's the craziest.
Which actually, and that's Nemeth is mentioning camp, and actually years ago, you can imagine my young nephew who's does not live in the music world. One day he says, hey Uncle Jim, I know you like do stuff with bands, and you ought to hear my friend, at camp, his name is Emmet, and he's like a really good jazz piano player. I'm like, okay, Will, sure, great. And I'm thinking, what in the world would Will know about jazz either way? And sure enough, then here we are. So God, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead, Veronica. I jumped in when you said Books and Books.
That's where we first met. Yeah. And then of course, I went to the University of Miami, and that's when Emmet moved to New York. So we had just missed each other for school.
Got it. Okay. So then let's talk about when you two first did actually not miss each other, but say, let's do something together musically.
It was your record, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah. My record, Lonely Woman, which is my mom and dad released it from their little label. And I didn't really know Emmet that well at that point, but I asked him if he would want to do a few numbers on the record.
Mhm.
And we were playing the song Lonely Woman, the title track. And it was just a duo. And it was just really special. I remember in the studio being really special. And yeah, what do we say? Love at first sound.
First note.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you two definitely seem very simpatico. I can say that I've listened to a lot of pianists and singers, probably my two favorite, if I could be honest. You know, my own musical background is what I love more than anything. And you two have a very, 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 very special connection. And Emmett, it's not always easy for great jazz piano players to be great supporters and accompanists of singers. I've noticed they're not the same talent. There are some great jazz pianists, but they're not for singers. And there are some great jazz accompanists who are great with singers, but they're not really as comfortable out there. But you seem to have your foot in both those worlds, and so I find that when I've listened to you, it caught me very, very quickly. I was like, oh, these two are simpatico beyond their years. How interesting. So that comes across. I assume you feel that way.
Yeah, I think that's something that I put a lot of time and effort into, is learning how to make music with other human beings. You know, it's really easy to play by yourself and be impressive. It's really, really hard to play with other musicians and uplift them in the scenario. And I think no matter what situation I'm in, I'm always thinking about being an accompanist. You know, if I'm playing with Christian McBride, I'm like, how can I make Christian McBride sound better? You know, if I'm playing with Kurt Elling, I'm saying, how can I just be the right amount for this situation? And I'm lucky to have, you know, Shelley Berg as a mentor. And he was always like, you know, the hardest thing in the world to do is the company. And if you, you know, if you approach it from a place of feeling, you know, you can't be wrong if you're feeling something. And that was his mantra always: don't try, just be. You can't fail at being, but you can fail if you try. And so I always think about that when I'm accompanying them. So I'm not trying to accompany, I'm just being one with the music. And I think that's helped me, you know, just be able to listen and to feel. You know, listening is a word that's thrown around all the time in jazz. But, you know, what does it really mean? It just means, you know, being able to receive and being able to be present in the moment, and also having the skill set and the background and the knowledge and the experience to make it, you know, to uplift the situation. And that's, I think, what it's about. So
nice.
My
So
mind.
who are besides Shelley, and then I'm going to ask Veronica the same thing, but let's start with you. Who would you say are your couple of heroes, piano heroes, and maybe whether you met them or not? I mean, some of the older ones, I'm sure you didn't. But then besides Shelley, who would you say, no, it's somebody who I would really call a mentor, who really stuck, you know, made such a difference? And what Shelley, obviously one of those people. Who else would you put on that short list?
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, there's people you listen to on records, the people you identify with like that. You know, when I listen to Ahmad Jamal or Fats Waller or Art Tatum or Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, Barry Harris, Cedar Walton, Herbie Hancock, McCoy Tyner, people like that, you know, I all consider, you know, my musical ancestors, and very many more. But then, you know, the people you have interactions with, those are people that make time for you in their lives and have, you know, the special connection. And Shelley was definitely one in college. I took piano lessons with a teacher at Manhattan School of Music. His name is Jeremy Manasia. He would have me over his house every Wednesday for a couple of years when I was in high school. And the lessons would be 3 hours long, and he'd play for me Bud Powell and Sonny Clark, and then we sit down and we go through the Barry Harris scales and take him through, and then we just talk about life and talking about accompanying, talking about playing bebop and why Brad Mehldau is so special in the jazz world. And he would just give me, you know, just fuel me with all this information. And you know, I think when you're a student, you don't really know how to receive all that information. And so you like, it comes all at you at different times. And then as you grow and as you develop and as you have some time and space, it starts to soak in like a sponge very slowly in different ways. So maybe something that my classical piano teacher, his name is Dr. Peter Vinograde, also Manhattan School of Music, something he told me, it may not have sunken in, you know, until 10 years later. And I think that's the incredible thing about teaching. It's like, you know, you're giving this information and you're imparting your experience and your knowledge, but it may not be directly affecting the student in that time, but you have to have faith that that student, if they're serious about what they're doing, they'll come around and they'll understand in their own way at a certain point. And I think that's the magical thing about, like, I've been also thinking about the fine line between student and teacher. I wrote about that this week in a newsletter, just that you're always learning from your students too, and you're always kind of, you know, teaching and learning, and just this tightrope you're going back and forth, and I've been playing with that a lot lately, and right. This question makes me think of that. You know, I'm always still I'm learning from everyone. I'm learning, you know, from every experience, you know, personally, musically.
That's a good attitude.
And spiritually yeah. as well.
Nice. That's a good attitude that comes through. Veronica, I'd like to ask you a kind of the same question. Who were your heroes, and who were your mentors that have really, if you had to pick a couple that just made such a difference in who you are and where you are?
And that's, of course, heroes in terms of, most people would expect me to say the heroes in terms of jazz singing. But when I think of heroes, really, I'm thinking about the people that artistically inspire me. So that doesn't even have to be a musician, but the people that always jump to my mind first are people who are not just musical artists, but entertainers as well. And that the two don't have to be, you know, even Miles Davis was an entertainer in that he didn't do it, you know, like there's, you have a thing, right? So I would have to say, well, of course, like for those of the jazz fans listening, like my favorite jazz singers, Anita O'Day, June Christie, Dinah Washington, Ethel Waters, Mildred Bailey. You know, these are some of my favorite jazz singers, but heroes,
Good list.
But I would say, like, I kind of, and I put Nina Simone in a different category because for her, like, those are my favorite jazz singers. Okay, yes, and vocalist, but Nina Simone is like, there's a reason why I'm saying this separately, because my heroes are the ones that weren't defined by a genre. Their name that defines the genre, like Nina Simone. Mm-hmm. She wasn't just a jazz singer. She was a classical pianist. She was, you know, poet, all these things, activist, and her art was literally just the name. And, you know, like Queen, another example, Queen, that the name is the genre. You know what you're listening to. And that's something I kind of have modeled everything in my artistry after. Now for mentors, that's another question that, like Emmett said it perfectly, that, you know, some of the people, names that y'all wouldn't know, because these are people that I grew up, these are my teachers growing up. For example, Greg Thomas was my high school band director, and I played trumpet in high school. And he wasn't just a band director where he gets the sheet music and says, okay, class, we're going to learn this music and teach it to us. No, he says, okay, we play through it a few times. And he's like, okay, saxophones, go write a soli for a couple courses and do a key change if you want here and there. He gets us all thinking out of the box like arrangers. We're not just reading what's on the page, because so much in jazz music, especially, it's not on the page. And my teacher, Greg Thomas, got me to think like that. So I really owe a lot to him. And there's, of course, other people like Dave Adams, who got me started. Young Rascals Jazz Project. I was 9 years old touring with them. That was my first real gig, was with those guys. And, you know, he did a lot for the inner city schools and programs in the tri-state area as well, bringing jazz to those students. So these people are heroes as well.
And you mentioned before the recording and your parents and maybe a lot of
my heroes too, of course. My parents.
Maybe a lot. Why don't you come on, tell us a little bit about that connection and inspiration.
Yeah. My mother. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
My father. For those who don't know, my father, Hot O'Brien, great late bebop pianist. He made his name in the scene in like the late 50s and 60s. And then he went to Europe in the 70s, 80s, and he met my mom in New York in the 80s when he introduced her to this wonderful world of jazz, and she fell in love with him and with the music by falling in love with the man, kind of. And then she had never sung jazz before, and she fell in love with this music, quit her job on Wall Street, became a jazz singer, and then the next year got a gig singing with Jon Hendrix's group. Wow. And so, yeah, like she's a brilliant lyricist as well, and singer, of course. She scats and programs like nobody else, and that was what I grew up with. My mom and dad, you know, this bebop vocabulary.
Nice. So, yeah, it's great to see how much both of you have absorbed along the way. It's really it's great. I'm curious because Veronica, you said something that just made me think. And I'm curious, since you obviously have a pretty wide experience about singing, and you mentioned, I think when an artist gets to be so iconic that it only needs one name to identify them. This happens with athletes also, but it certainly happens with artists too. And there happens, like, if there happens to be I just saw recently, someone turned me on to it. I'm curious if you're aware of this. There's a series which is on Hulu. It's been going for 3 years, and it's called Genius. And it's a season that they do. And they just did Aretha, a series on the life of Aretha Franklin with a singer that you may know. She's British, and she was made, I can't remember her name. If I said it, you'd think of her. She was in The Color Purple about 10 years ago and became quite famous. She is trying to take on the role of singing Aretha she did it. And it's her whole life story from when she was a kid, singing in church in, I think it was Alabama, and just what a life story beyond, and the music, and just, so I'd throw that out there to you and anyone who's listening. If you're a fan to understand a great artist and their life, and of course the life that she lived, it wasn't just the music, the time that she came up in, and what became of her life when she was older. She only died a few years ago. It's quite an amazing, really, 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 really great story.
Check it out.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. They're also they also did one on Einstein and Picasso, and Aretha is the third. There you go again. You only need one name, Einstein or Picasso. You know who we're talking about. So what's going on? Let's take with each of you. You're coming, we've had you here together, and we're going to do it again. And now the question that I have for you each, because this is just the beautiful thing about talented jazz people, is how you can, like good food, can mix with so many different people in combination. So I'd like to know from each of you, and we got about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes before we go to our Q&A part with the listeners. What are you looking forward to that you're really excited about? What's out there on the horizon for you, separate from what you all do together, which is just one thing, and then you do other things? What are you really looking forward to in the next 3 to 5 years? What kind of project? Veronica, you go first, and then Emmett.
Well, I think my new record that just came out, Emmett and I did, this Bitter Earth, has just a little hint of, cross genre stuff that I've been really dying to, warm the audience that comes to our shows, warm them up to, these other parts of who I am, because it's important for me to show my whole self on stage. That's, sure. Because I've been having some trouble just doing, you kind of have to do that when you're in your beginning of your career, just like you have to brand yourself so specifically in order to get noticed. And now I'm seeing a very positive reaction across the board from different audiences about, wanting to hear more of different genre, what else is there, because they get to know the artist and they're like, we want to know more about you. And I think the next few years, there'll be a lot more of that, which I'm live and on records, opera, and in a way that makes sense. It's not just like, okay, now we're going to do a rock and roll song, no, it's something that makes sense programming wise.
Like tell me a little bit more, like what would that mean, genre? Just however you would describe it.
Well, listen, let's just tell everyone to listen to Peggy Lee's Big Spender and then listen to Big Spender by Queen. You know, we do them both. You know,
Okay.
and just, you know, some maybe organ trio vibes in there, different. We have adding guitars and strings and synths and light shows and smoke machines. The production value is going to just increase, and I'm really excited to just add these new sounds in there.
Sounds good. I look forward to hearing your Queen version of that Peggy Lee song. Peggy Lee did that song pretty well, but I'm sure Queen has a whole nother take on it.
That's what I like to do. I like to offer different lights. That's what a lot of songs in this Bitter Earth are like. That He Hit Me, completely different from the original, you know. And same thing with Carefully Taught.
I'm curious if you know, either of you, a woman who I would consider a contemporary of yours, a singer, Liz Wright.
Of course. Well, of course, one of the groups.
Super dope.
So I think of when you were talking about the Queen version of the Peggy Lee song, for some reason, I don't know why, immediately into my mind flashed, oh, I had that sensation the first time I heard Liz Wright, and it was on this record that she did called Salt, and it was her version of A Taste of Honey, which is, you know, a very beautiful, famous song that we all know. But it was so beautifully reinvented and so beautifully hers. And just to your point, I associate that song in my mind now. If I hear it, I think of Liz Wright, which is cool, which is a tribute to her and how she made it personal. I think I love that you're going that way. And I think, I'll just say personally, I think covers, sometimes jazz musicians are more guilty of this than any. I won't say more, but that sometimes covers get a bad rap. Like, oh, you know, I want to do original music and everything original. It's okay.
Which is fine.
But what's wrong with taking a magnificent song and reinventing it your own way, with taking, you know, that's it. So
arguably it can be just as original if you have an arrangement that just completely dissects the song. You know, think of Sweet Dreams Eurythmics and Sweet Dreams Marilyn Manson. They're completely different songs and different genres. And this is what I love. Nice.
So, and is this album, it's out. Is it out? It is out. The one that you were
Yes, it came out 2 weeks ago.
Timing is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Emmett, what's on store for you in the next 3 to 5 years that you are quite excited about, besides coming to Aspen?
God, well, 3 to 5 years is a long time.
All right, 1 to 2 years, whatever you want, whatever you're excited about. I'll
tell you. No, just that I'm prefacing by saying that is a long time, and I've been in New York for 8 years now, and had a chance to really, you know, see a whole generation come up under me, and there's so much out there, and if this 1 year taught me anything this past year, it's that what I want for the world, what I want for the music, is much bigger than just myself, and that I think that, like, what we do for the world, what our community is, who we surround ourselves with, the humanity that we display, these are all things that are more important for me than where I'm going to play next Tuesday, or who's going to be the special guest on Monday, or whatever, you know, whatever direction life is. And this year has taught me that, like, whatever you plan for the next year, or the next 2 years, or the next 5 years, is not going to be what's actually happening. And so, you know, this past year, we've taken to the internet and created a show in my house called Live from Emmets Place, and there's been a couple of things about doing that every week that have been really great. But the one thing is that, like, people all over the world need this music and need this sense of community. And it's a place where they can come together and be safe and rejoice in the joy of the music, in the spirit of the music. And the other amazing thing about it is that now we've been able to get all these special guests to come into the house. And a lot of times they come in and they say, hey, we haven't played a gig in an entire year. and this felt so good. Thank you so much. Like, this is such a powerful thing. And I think that that's been teaching me that there's so much more to give with the music, to create opportunities for people to listen that wouldn't ordinarily have opportunity to listen. And I always come up with some crazy ideas, because for me, my artistry is a lot more far reaching than just playing the piano. I like to be creative in entrepreneurship and ways that I express myself, and all kinds of different avenues in my life. And one thing that I have eyes to do now is maybe like make a Live from Emmet's Place online virtual jazz club that has multiple bands per week, and then someone in Siberia, where I just came back from, that doesn't have a chance to go to New York and hear these jazz clubs, can get a taste of this New York New York vibe. And small jazz club does a nice job at that, but there's a certain level of curation that I would love to lend my artistic direction to. And so for me, it's I want to continue to play, and I want to continue to travel and see the world and experience other cultures. And I've been super lucky to be on 25 planes this past year, and Aspen was the first place that we came to perform. So thank you for that. The last place I just was with my band was Russia. We did 4 cities in there, and the people just needed the music so badly.
Where did you play in Russia? I'm just finding that just stunning right now.
We played in Sochi. We played concert halls basically in Sochi, Tula, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. And so I was out with.
And these was the audience distanced? Was it like, or were they all in there with masks, or what was it like?
Some places, yes. Some places, no. St. Petersburg, 2,500 seat concert hall. People were shoulder to shoulder. They opened things back up. And that's how it was. In Moscow, there in the International House of Music, there were socially distant, more safer precautions. But it's interesting to see all over the world how people are doing things. We also went to Europe in October for 3 weeks and did 12 cities. And so, more than the political aspects of everything that's going on, like there are people just like me and you and that love this music that come up to us after the show or write me after the show and say, hey, like I really needed this for my life. This helped me. And that's what fuels me this year, next year, the 3 to 5 years. It's how we can make the world a better place through our music. And I think that's where my mind is at for now.
Nice. That sounds great. Veronica, why did you cheer when he said Moscow?
Oh, because I'm dating a Russian.
Oh.
Whoa. She's a fast study.
Well, anybody who's a jazz musician has good ears, so you should be able to learn language faster than the average person. But please, Veronica, would you just give us a sentence or two? And you've obviously learned something. So go ahead, give us a sentence or two in Russian and then translate it for us.
So what I just said was I only speak a little Russian.
Oh, but say it.
Я лично немного говорю по-русски.
Okay.
No, but I was cheering Emmet because he's out there working.
Yeah.
That's why I was cheering, really.
Okay, that's great.
No, I mean, he's out there, man.
You've traveled more than most people that I know in the jazz world in the last year. I haven't had too many conversations where people dropped as many places that they've actually been to in the last 6 months as you have. So,
yeah, I think I had a conversation with our favorite Benny Green last week.
Yeah.
And we love him very dearly. And I asked him if he would fly out and come play at my house and honor him. And he lives in San Francisco, and he said he would love to do it, but he's not ready to do it yet. And he said, "Hey man, you guys are on the front lines."
Yeah.
And I'm taking it easy now. The people in my generation are taking it easy. And you're the one that has to go out there and bring the music to the people. You're the age. I just turned 30 this past year in quarantine, and it's our responsibility to as young people who play this music seriously and have learned from the masters to take it on the road at this time for the people. So that's my mindset. How would Dizzy Gillespie and Louis Armstrong and people like that, how would they approach this situation in their prime? and you know, they would go out and bring the music because the music is the healer and the unifier.
Yeah. I think of somebody who, when you said that, Benny said something along the lines of, well, you're the ones doing it now, you know, people in my generation just kicking back. I can only think of Benny Green as 30 years old and his face. And I remember first encountering him with Christian McBride. Christian one day brought him and he said, hey, I'm bringing a trio and it's got Benny Green. And I said, oh, I've heard of Benny Green. He said, yeah, you're going to really like him. And that was, I guess it was 20 years ago, but it seems like it was yesterday.
I grew up listening to Christian McBride and Benny Green and Carl Allen and Kenny Washington, all that whole generation, and so many more too. Roy Hargrove, you know, all the whole young lion in the '90s scene, and you know, I wanted to be just like Benny Green and play with Christian McBride, and it's so crazy how, you know, I've studied the records and I went to go see them play and I hung around, I asked questions, and you know, I made it, you know, a 10-year goal of mine, and then it's, you know, it's really cool to be, you know, I guess next time I'm playing with McBride this next month in Connecticut, and then I guess we're coming to Aspen with Christian in the summertime. Yeah, in the summertime. So, you know, for me, this whole thing is still a dream come true to be able to make music with the people I grew up listening to and idolizing. And
well, I'm gonna drop in one name that's amazingly, of all the names that both of you have said, and I'll drop in one that was, for me, that kind of person who meant so much, and that's Ray Brown, the bass player. And I met Ray through Monty Alexander, who's really the guy that my first encounter of music when I was a kid was Monty, fresh off the boat from Kingston, Jamaica. He landed in Miami, and we heard him by complete dumb luck. We were driving in a car, South Miami, and there's a sign that says Checkmate Lounge, Monty Alexander Trio, Jazz Tonight. And this would be the 1960s. And if I could tell you where the Checkmate Lounge was, it was like the Everglades. It was like nowhere. But anyway, through Monty, I met Ray, and Ray was a person who was absolutely that person who's like, you, Emmett, you're like Ray, and you will be like Ray. That person who just, his spirit was so strong, and his integrity as a person was so strong, and his artistry, he put it all together, and he helped so many people. He was just a tremendous, tremendous role model for people. And he just helped, whether you were a musician or you were in the business or you were an audience. He just had an amazing ability to lift people up. And he had that, you know, amazing life. He played music every day, he gigged every day, gigged every night. And one day in his 70s, he apparently had heat stroke from playing golf, which you like to do, and he didn't wake up that morning. He had a gig that night. That was Ray. He played till the second, you know, that was him. And there was no stopping Ray Brown. Okay, so listen,
McBride. I just want to say McBride is really the, you know, the next in line, and John Clayton, but McBride has fostered these bands with young musicians in them for years,
and he learned that from Ray Brown. There's no doubt. Ray was that person who just he taught so many people. He was such an example. So listen, we're going to shift now